Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first Building for Digital Equity event of 2024. If you are here and you want to learn more about things like the ACP wind down process, learn how community organizations and local governments are helping their communities transition off of ACP and providing a unique structural solution to addressing affordable connectivity, then you are in the right spot. For the next hour and 15 minutes, you're going to hear from Amy Huffman, NDIA Policy Director, who will level set on the current state of ACP and the wind down process. Then we'll jump over to our very popular lightning round segment that spotlights short and long-term community work in the face of ACP demise and an overview of local government's ACP supplement program. Then we're going to hear from Monica Gonzalez, the Digital Equity Supervisor for Methodist Healthcare Ministries in Texas, who will give an overview of what her faith-based nonprofit healthcare organization is doing to address affordable connectivity across the 74-county South Texas region. Following her is going to be Jose Pena, the Innovation and Technology Director for the City of FAR in Texas, who will share how FAR Connect, the city's fiber's internet service, is able to provide gig speed fiber service to low-income student households at no cost to the family. And last but not least, we have our awesome keynote speaker, Rebecca Kuma, the Director of Digital Equity for the County of Los Angeles, who will share racial equity-centered based practices and strategies for engaging with diverse communities and strategies that you can apply during your ACP transition support. She will also speak on the work that the County of LA is doing to transition residents off of ACP. The Building for Digital Equity, this is an educational series of live stream events and podcasts to inform and debate digital inclusion efforts. And today's event is hosted by ILSR, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and National Digital Inclusion Alliance, NDIA. The Building for Digital Equity live streams are sponsored by Utopia Fiber, the largest open access fiber network in the nation. And I'm happy again to be co-hosting with Chris. My name is Pamela, she, they, and I am the Training and Community Engagement Manager over at NDIA. NDIA advances digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. And we advocate for programs like yours, for programs that focus on broadband access, community programs on equipping policymakers to act. We also advocate on behalf of organizations focusing on tech devices, broadband access, digital skills, and tech support. And today, NDIA has over 1,600 affiliates, including 13 tribal entities and organizations in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I will be your co-MC for today, along with Chris.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I'm a little bit intimidated. We have partners in some states. I don't know anyone in Guam, I'm afraid to say. But we've got friends everywhere who are doing great work. So I'm with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I am the director of the Community Broadband Networks program, which has there's 8 of us now working on issues of how to make sure everyone has high quality internet access. I go by he, him pronouns, and also am involved with the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp series. We just had a wonderful event, and welcome you all to follow Tribal Broadband Bootcamp on Instagram. It's not related to any of this, but it's a promo to a large audience, so thought I could get away with it. We do a lot of digital equity stuff in partnership with NDIA there as well. Today, as always, we encourage you to jump into the chat, say hi. We have an audience engagement question. We've got some trivia questions. There won't be any prizes, unfortunately, except for our admiration and your pride. But you can throw the questions in the chat, respond in the chat, ask things in the chat. There's a little bit of lag from when we are recording this or when we're saying something to when you are hearing it. And so we are doing our best to monitor the chat and respond to issues. So know that we cannot respond immediately, and we need to know, we're doing the best we can because we are a little bit in the future compared to you. If you have any challenges or you just need to send an email to someone about something that's not working out, Christine at ilsr.org would be a good place to email. That's Christine Parker, Christine. So I think that's a common spelling, but I don't know. There's so many ways to spell Christine. The show today is going to be wonderful. We've got some great folks coming on, and we've got really great trivia all about this difficult time as we are transitioning away from the Affordable Connectivity Program, something that you are all familiar with, something that we're all deeply concerned with. So I think that leads us into an audience engagement question.
Yes, and if you are new here, you know that you might not know, but we love to engage y'all with some fun trivia and love to hear about how you're doing, how you're feeling. So, in the chat, please, on a scale of 1 to 3, share how prepared do you feel about ACP transition. For 1, put 1 if you are feeling not prepared, you're screaming internally, help, you have no idea what's going on, you're flying by the seat of your pants. Put 2 if you're, moderately prepared, you're figuring it out, you have a general understanding of the wind down process, but you could always use more information and support. And put 3 if you feel like you got this, you feel like you're fully prepared, you feel confident, you feel like you can get on stage and host with us about the ACP wind down process and transition. And we're going to let y'all kind of answer that in the chat while we invite our first speaker up on stage.
Before we do that, so I'm already seeing some 0.5s. I'm impressed. I like people. They're pretty innovative. We're going to be looking at those responses and we'll address them after the first speaker. If you have questions as well about how you're feeling or things like that, you can throw them in the chat. We'll see if we can work them into a quick Q&A. If you want to make sure your chats are being received, YouTube is your best option. So you can view this program in multiple different ways, but YouTube is a place where we know that we can get your comments. So sorry, Pamela, I was supposed to say that earlier, but now I got it done.
No, you are all good. And I agree. I do love the 0.5s. I'm waiting for somebody to come in with a 0.75 or a 0.9 or something like that. But all right, so let's start off with a current state of play with ACP. And who better to do that than the wonderful and trusted Amy Huffman, who is the Director of Policy at NDIA. Amy, thank you so much again for coming back on the show. What updates can you give us about ACP and where are we at in the wind down timeline?
Hi, friends. Both Pamela and Chris, good to see you both again in this really fun, this is fun to you coming on stage. I like that a lot. And hi, the rest of you that are watching. I am here again as the bearer of bad news. I don't have great news for everyone, although I think we'll know a lot more by next week about where things stand with funding for ACP. So basically, there are a couple options in front of us in terms of funding. So a few months ago, there was a bill that was introduced at the beginning of January. It was bipartisan and bicameral. It's called the ACP Extension Act. And that's a clean funding bill to provide $7 billion for the program to last basically through the end of this calendar year in hopes that then there would be a permanent solution that would carry us beyond that. That bill is still live. It is still rolling and actually just got a bunch of new co-sponsors. It has over 200 co-sponsors in the House. And again, it's bipartisan. So it is exciting that there's that much support behind it. The challenge that we keep coming up against is this is great. And how are we going to pay for it? And so Congress has not come up with that solution yet. And we're waiting to see whether it will be in the, if Congress keeps their lights on this week. So as you might know, we are in another shutdown week, potentially for the federal government. So they're working through finishing budget negotiations and hopefully the ACP funding could be in there. If not, there's a couple other things in play that may come alongside this bill that would extend the program through the end of the year. The reality is that it's March 20th, and the last full month that ACP can pay for the full benefit is April. So the clock is not only just ticking, we're like racing towards the end here, folks. So here's a timeline that you probably are aware of if you've been following this at all. But essentially where we are is that as of yesterday, providers sent out, and those are providers participating in the ACP program, sent out their second notice to customers that are enrolled in the program, letting them know that the program will end. And a couple other things that they included in those notifications. The commission a few weeks ago let us know, not just us, NDA, but everyone know that the last full month that the benefit will be $30 will be April. So at the end of April, the benefit will no longer exist at $30. There are some dollars left over though. So May will be a partial benefit month. And the range is between $7 and I think $16 that a provider may be able to leverage to support a partial benefit for households in May. That part is really a little fuzzy, and we'll see how it plays out. Providers can choose not to participate in that partial benefit. And they can also choose how much to pass on to the consumer and things of that nature. So again, where we are is there's still hope, but things are not looking good. So it is definitely time to begin planning to support the folks that you work with in finding alternative solutions or figuring out how they might be able to make room in their budget for their internet bill. We suggest that every consumer call their provider and talk to them to get their options from that provider. And then potentially, even if they are able to, shop around. We know not everyone has multiple providers in the area, but they can find out what their options are from other providers as well. So those are our biggest and best tips. And with that, I will hand the mic back to Pamela.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy, for those updates, and especially helpful for knowing that it's time to start planning and finding those alternative solutions. And I'm sure community members have already started to let their community members know to start shopping around. Hopefully folks are getting in touch with their internet service providers to get more info. And looking at the comments, we're seeing that there are a lot of 2s, thankfully. And if we include those 0.5s, then it's probably closer to a 2.5, but I can't do math. And so with that, that's great. That means people are feeling moderately prepared, and it's great that you're all here to get that support. It's always good to be part of the conversation and to get those updates because things are super uncertain right now.
And one place to seek for help if you're dealing with something where you have you're working with someone and they say, "I heard this," or "This thing happened to me." The NDIA listserv is where you can often connect with other people, and it's a way for the rest of us to keep an eye on what's happening out there. So feel free to report there, as if you're on that list, you've seen other people doing.
Thanks.
I mean, I would say that we are expecting some bill shock. I think there's a number of people who have not received any notices. They are maybe perhaps not used to paying anything, so they haven't been paying that much attention. And when they suddenly get a bill, it's going to be painful. I mean, I do think this is going to be a painful process, which I think has been covered. But just to be very clear about that, this is not going to go very smoothly.
Yes, I completely agree.
Thank you, Chris, for highlighting joining the NDIA listserv and being part of that conversation. Folks are sharing updates and resources in real time as they're getting it, and they're seeing their community members getting notifications from their internet service providers and asking, "Hey, is this right? Is anyone else getting this too?" So be part of that. NDA also has other resources like our Affordable Connectivity program transition page that can help you with some talking points when talking with community members, as well as our free and low-cost internet plans page that is regularly updated. All right, I think we can jump over to our first trivia question. And I think you'll notice a theme with all of our trivia questions that they'll be helpful with learning more about the ACP wind down. All right. So first question, can subscribers report noncompliance from their internet service providers if they're experiencing issues like charging a household early termination fees or terminating an eligible ACP household service for failure to pay within those 90 days or other billing and service issues? What do you think? Do you think it's a no, there's no recourse for that, they just have to deal with it? Or is it a B, yes, there might be some options?
A lot of confident answers rolling in already. A lot of people saying that, yes, there is an option. I don't want to spoil it for anyone that's a few seconds behind, but we're seeing a number of B's in the chat. I haven't seen an A yet.
So I'm understanding why the 2.5s are coming in because people know their stuff. Awesome. All right, then we can share what the answer is. It is B, yes, subscribers can file a complaint through the FCC. And I'd love to bring Amy back on to talk about how you can do that, as well as why it's important to file that complaint.
So the how is via the link that was on the slide that Pamela just had up. And the why is simply so that there's a record, there's a paper trail, there's proof of problems that are happening. The FCC needs that in order to be able to go investigate things. And then if enough things are submitted, then there might be a pattern that they can discover, right? And so it is really important to file complaints, even if you're unsure, right? Like even if the household's unsure whether it actually violates the rules and orders that have been put out from the FCC, or if it just feels icky, like if it just feels like, hey, this doesn't feel right. This shouldn't be happening. I should have been told about this and I wasn't, then a complaint should be filed. And that is something that you all can help do, right? Like you can help your consumers that you're working with file those complaints and know that that's even an option. Because so many times we don't even know how we can advocate for ourselves. There's an ability or a place to do so. And in this case, there absolutely is.
And there was a question about whether that is taken seriously effectively, whether anyone pays attention to complaints. And I think you could say yes and no. I think for a lot of people that are worried about accountability from some often bigger service providers who customer service might not be as good as some of the more responsive ones. I think we would like to see more accountability. However, there is accountability there. And that is something where, filing an official complaint with the FCC, which should be done after due diligence, you should make sure you have your facts in order and things like that. That is taken seriously by most of the companies. They do not want to have a lot of complaints filed where it looks like they're not taking action on something.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. There is a question in the chat, Amy. I don't know if you know, it could be a simple, if you do, then you could share, if not. But it's from Patrick Besek with Open Undivided, our previous keynote speaker. Hey, Patrick, thanks for joining us. His question is there is it clear when the consumer protections, like the no cancellation fees, is there a clear date on when that will expire, or is that dependent on the internet service provider?
Patrick, that is a good question that I'd like to get back to everyone on. Hi, Patrick. There's some things in the, not the report and order. Sorry, I'm getting the public notice around this. Let me go back and look at it and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, perhaps by the end of the show. If not, I suspect you'll see a very clear email from Amy to the NDIA list answering that question if we don't get to it here.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy, for hopping on the show again and giving us those crucial updates. Everybody and our community and our audience really appreciates you.
Thank you, Pamela.
Yeah, and we look forward to having you back when you have good news to share. We're not going to only keep you as the bearer of bad news.
Yes, please. There are fun, good things happening too. I want to be part of those.
Yes. Hopefully next time you're here, it'll be all good news. But thank you so much for bringing your expertise.
Okay.
And awesome. So next up, we have our very popular and crowd favorite lightning round segment. So lightning rounds, these are spotlights opportunities for us to spotlight unique digital inclusion initiatives. And today you're going to be hearing from two different organizations on how they're addressing affordable connectivity in their communities. And to kick things off, we're starting with the change maker, the innovator, Meg Koifer, who is the president and founding member of the STEM Alliance.
Hi, can you all hear me? We're good? Can we bring my slides up? Hi, I am Meg Koifer. As I mentioned, I work in Westchester County, New York for our organization, the STEM Alliance. I'm happy to be here speaking today. I do also want to recognize, however, that there's a large group of staff who actually do the work in the field, and I want to say thank you to them first. What I want to talk to you about today is a large-scale initiative that we did in Yonkers, New York. Yonkers is New York State's third largest city. And this program was operating during the time that ACP was functioning. And I want to talk about kind of what it tells us even in post-ACP world. Next slide, or I guess I can do my slides. Here we go. So top of the line, many of you know and are familiar with Digital Navigator programs. Our goal was to help people according to their needs with access to device ownership, to education, or to internet assistance, which at the time was predominantly helping them enroll in ACP. Some individuals also received a hotspot solution if they were not eligible or for other reasons. So we had pretty phenomenal results in terms of the pure outputs. 628 individuals received Chromebooks. 375 of those individuals got education alongside because that was compatible with their needs. And 173 people were assisted with internet services through ACP or a hotspot. So our impact when we did a Wave 2 survey and we spoke to them 3 to 6 months after our services had been provided, we see that what we're doing with individuals and helping them with the digital divide is hugely impactful from a workforce and economic impact perspective. 81% better able to manage money and personal finances, 74% saving money because they can use the internet to get better pricing on things, 57% improving their basic workforce skills, and 45% starting or promoting a pre-existing business. So these are great impact metrics and everything that we believe in. We also, though, wanted to pause and talk a little bit more about internet affordability. So when we asked clients at intake whether or not it was difficult to pay for internet, 21% said yes, it was very difficult to pay for internet. Fast forward 3 to 6 months later, after we've helped them, half as many people reported that it was very difficult to pay for internet. That's a huge improvement. We were pretty proud that we had cut that in half. But when we stepped back and looked at the data a little bit more closely, there was a curiosity in that statistic. Because in fact, the majority of people that we helped them with device access. And then second, we helped them with skills. Only 25% of the people that we served, did we actually give them a direct reduction in internet cost. So how is it that 3 to 6 months later, people were reporting that internet was, fewer people were reporting that internet was very difficult to pay for? We think this is a very important conclusion that we are drawing from the data that relates to what's going on post-ACP. Ultimately, we feel our data is showing that internet affordability is determined by value. It's a value proposition. And if you don't own a device and you don't have the skills to use the internet, then by definition, it's not affordable. There really is almost no price that could be affordable. We absolutely believe that we must make internet affordable, and we are not saying that we should abandon all of our efforts. But in our post-ACP world, we should also understand that affordability is determined by the ability to use that resource, device ownership, and skills. And so we need to double down on that work stream, even as we are defending programs for affordability. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Meg. It's always great hearing you talk about this. It's always a mic drop after that. Thank you so much for sharing. And next up, I also want to congratulate you, Meg, on you and the STEM Alliance for the 20,000 digital education grant that you received from Spectrum. So congratulations on that. And to finish our lightning rounds, we have a literal trailblazer amongst us, Jason Indofuentes, the program manager of the Broadband Accessibility and Affordable Office of Accessibility and Affordable Office of Albemarle County. Albemarle County is a 2023 Digital Inclusion Trailblazer awardee. Jason, please tell us more about the ACP Bridge program.
Thank you so much, Pamela. I'm really excited to share with you all. And I'm going to touch briefly, since we're doing a lightning round and I like calls to action, I'm going to touch briefly on ACP Bridge. And then I'm going to make kind of a bold call now that we've got the opportunity. So first, let's talk about who we are. This is Albemarle County. The empty spot right there in the middle, that's the city of Charlottesville. The University of Virginia is also here in Albemarle County. And if you notice those red spots, those are areas that we were able to determine are going to be struggling with broadband affordability. Required a little bit of data wrangling to figure that out. But that inspired us to really get to work, because we saw a lot of areas that were deeply, deeply red. And we wanted to make sure that we had a solution for those individuals that were lacking in affordable broadband solutions. So we built a benefit. And there's a white paper. I'm happy to share it with everybody. We put it on the NDI listserv, I think 2 weeks ago now. And that shows our process. And that also shows what the benefit ultimately ended up being. And I summarized it here. It's a supplement. It's a supplement to the ACP. And that's important because it made it something that had an incredibly low administrative overhead. And so I can summarize the entire process right here, because it's providers enroll via memorandum of agreement. They enroll with us. The providers do. The beneficiaries don't need to enroll with us. They enroll with the provider. The provider utilizes ACP NLAD, and we'll come back to that in just a second, to either initiate or validate enrollment. And then the beneficiary just has to consent to sharing their information with us. Statement credits show up on their bills, just like their ACP statement credits. And then the provider invoices the county on a quarterly basis using the same ACP invoice that they were submitting to the FCC, just subsetting it for Albemarle County. And we process the invoice and we send that in. And I said we'd come back to that point. Provider utilizes NLAD to either ACP NLAD to either initiate or validate enrollment. The NLAD is the National Lifeline Accountability Database. And that word accountability is really important if you work for local government, because we're talking about tax dollars. And there is a supremacy of accountability when it comes to how those dollars get spent. So for us, the opportunity to build a supplement meant that we were, in large part, setting the responsibility for eligibility verification on the federal government. The ACP program, actually going back to the EBB, when they built it, one of the ideas was to utilize the NLAD, the National Lifeline Accountability Database, as the clearinghouse for whether somebody was going to be eligible for EBB and then ACP. And they enhanced it over time by including data from the Department of Education, Veterans Affairs, I believe, also added their data. And that meant everybody could go to NLAD and verify almost all cases through that one-stop shop. That was really, really attractive to us from an accountability standpoint. So we made the NLAD work for us. Again, offloading verification to it meant that we had a low administrative overhead. We had a one-time effort for beneficiaries. All they had to do was consent to giving us their information. They didn't need to go round and round with us. Yes, there are some people that probably needed to go through a couple of rounds of figuring out their information with ACP, but we could help them with that. It shifts fraud liability. Again, this is all about accountability. It's all about the way that local governments works. And it's also non-duplicative. We're not doing work that somebody else is already doing. So this made NLAD creating an ACP supplement really, really attractive to us. And so we think this is an opportunity that everybody should be able to take advantage of. And so our call is that we think USAC should make NLAD available for states and localities to build supplemental benefits on. What that would look like, I don't know. But I can tell you that right now, we're trying to take our ACP Bridge program and continue it after ACP. And what that's going to require from us might be switching it to a lifeline-based program, which means that we have to cut out all of our providers that aren't considered ECFs. We could switch it to a program where we have to collect data from residents and then verify it in some way, shape, or form, and then spit out an answer. And we don't have a whole lot of administrative overhead to do that. We don't have a lot of staff that can just receive this data, verify its validity, and then send us an okay to get started on providing somebody a benefit. So having a turnkey solution to us is incredibly important and something that we really, really would love to see happen in the near future.
Someone else muted me. I swear it wasn't me. Not for the first time. Jason, thank you so much for that. That's a really practical. We already see some notes in the chat of people who are appreciating that. I feel like sometimes when you have what feels like an insurmountable problem, if you can turn it into more bite-sized chunks and address it, it can really go a long way. And so having the infrastructure for the verifier in place is going to be tremendous. So
I appreciate that. And I will say, you mentioned on the Community Broadband Bits podcast recently, I believe it was Gigi Sohn that mentioned that lots of states are looking at alternatives to ACP. I guarantee you that a lot of the states that are going to back off of that, it's going to be because they realize that the administrative overhead of doing eligibility is hard.
Yes. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Well, that's the end of the lightning rounds. I think Pamela left because she was frustrated at doing all of the work of the whole event so far.
Not at all. Sorry about that. But thank you so much, Jason and Meg, for your awesome lightning round presentations. It's great to have you.
Yeah, and one of the things that I also learned from Meg that I think Meg does a wonderful job. The organization does a wonderful job of tracking how it makes a difference, and I think that's so important. As you have different digital equity coalitions, it's important to get out there and to be effective. It is also very important to make sure that you are finding a way to measure your effectiveness. That might be a qualitative, it might be quantitative, but it is a way to make sure that you are accountable to your audience, and you can also show other stakeholders, funders perhaps, that you are making a difference. And I feel like Meg's surveys do a great job of tracking how they are making a difference in people's lives. They can set metrics around it, measure themselves, and try to improve over time. So a lot of great work there.
Yes, I agree.
Now that's going to bring us into trivia, I think. Is that right?
Yes. Trivia.
Awesome. So thank you for our lightning rounds. And we have a trivia question that's about to pop up. There we go, to my right. Another, what is this? Nobody look. All right. Another FCC federal program that is available to help households with their bill for internet access is Lifeline. Been around for a long time, helping out with telephone and still eligible for telephone, but now also eligible for broadband. The monthly discount is up to $9.25 for households who are, in most cases in the United States, with an additional benefit on for those on tribal lands. They're eligible for up to $34.25 a month. And so the question is, if a household is enrolled in the ACP, will it automatically transfer to Lifeline? So A is no, B is yes. Here we go. We're getting a mix. We have at least one A in the audience, one no. We've got some yeses. And so as you're thinking about that, there's a lot of people who aren't fully committed, or the chat box is not quite there. More A's. So it looks like at least one of the B's was an A. So most people are saying no, it is not automatically transferred to Lifeline. Pamela, what's the deal here? How does it work?
You are correct if you answered A for no. They will actually need to apply for Lifeline separately. It is not an automatic transfer if you are enrolled in ACP, and that's very important for community members to know. That might be something that they assume. So yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. And as Jason had noted, there are different qualifications both for people and for the ISPs. If you're an internet service provider, it was easier to be involved in the ACP program. It was a lower regulatory burden to be in the ACP program than in the Lifeline program, where I believe you have to be what's called an ETC, an eligible telecommunications carrier. So there are some differences in the two programs.
Mm-hmm. And not all ACP recipients will qualify for Lifeline, and not all ACP internet companies participate in the Lifeline program as well.
Yes. And rather than banter more, we're going to move right ahead and catch up on the schedule.
Yes. So we are so excited. Please join me in welcoming our next speaker, the very, very talented and very passionate Monica Gonzalez. She is the Senior Programs Manager Office. She's a Senior Programs Manager over at the Office of the Methodist Healthcare Ministries of South Texas. And they are a nonprofit leader dedicated to creating access to healthcare for uninsured and low-income families. And they're working to advance digital equity in the region. Monica, welcome to the show. Can you please tell us more about Methodist Healthcare Ministries' digital equity implementation strategy?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me today. It's so exciting to be here and talk about a doom and gloom topic, ACP, but also thinking about the innovation and the work that's happening around the country. I think it's important that we highlight that and we learn from each other. So I'm going to start with a little bit about Methodist Healthcare Ministries. So next slide. So Methodist Healthcare Ministries is a faith-based nonprofit. We are housed in San Antonio, Texas. We are part owner of the Methodist Healthcare System along with HCA. So we use those proceeds to really invest back into the community in 74 counties across Texas. That dark shading is where we represent our service areas, those 74 counties. So if you can see, that's really a big piece of Texas. Texas is big, so it's a little bit over a third of the region, a third of the state of Texas that we cover. And we do that through direct services, through strategic partnerships and grant making. And we really have an interesting array of services that we offer. We are faith-based, so we do have some church connections. We have a couple of clinics that provide services to those who are uninsured or underinsured. We also have a Wesley Nurse program, which is our community-based nursing program in our 74 counties, which really serves as kind of that conduit to provide services, healthcare services, and other resources to community members, especially in rural areas. And really, we also have, grant making. That's a department I'm under, the community investments, policy and advocacy, and some work around collaboratives throughout our region. So next slide. So as I mentioned, we are a faith-based nonprofit. And so how did we get here? I think that's really important to look back at. In 2019, our board approved a new strategic plan for us. And one of the things they really were looking at was digital equity, food security, and economic mobility. And as you think as a healthcare organization, our board really had that foresight to think about back in 2019, before even the pandemic, that if we were going to talk about health equity and really addressing health outcomes, we had to talk about digital equity since our lives really revolve around technology. So giving that opportunity to our communities to make sure that they're connected and what that looks like. And for us, I joined MHM back in September of 2021. So I was charged with looking at what that strategy could be. And I think for us, one of the things we started off is thinking we were going to do some infrastructure projects, that was going to be the main kind of strategy we're going to use to really launch our digital equity strategic plan. But what we quickly learned is there's people doing that innovative work. There's people in that space. But, if you build it, doesn't mean they'll come. Going back to what Meg was talking about, people need to have those devices. People need to have those skills in order to see the value of digital equity and technology and the internet. So for us, we worked with stakeholders across the state, across the country, interviewing community members, interviewing nonprofits, ISPs, to better understand what was our role as a healthcare organization. And one of the things we kept on hearing loud and clear is people just don't have access, affordability, or the devices. So how can we really support those communities in those 74 counties to really make sure that we're creating that point of access, right? Because we're not trying to solve for anything differently than we were doing before with healthcare. It's really providing that access points for our community. And this just happens to be through broadband and technology. So really our goal is just what digital equity is, to really make sure that all our communities have that access and that technology capacity to engage for their social needs. So next slide. So through our strategy, we really developed 4 strategic pillars. And this was approved by our board in October of 2022. And one of the things we knew that coming out of that is that ACP wasn't going to be forever. So that's one of the things we really talked about and really honed in on refining of what our strategy would be like. But if you look at these 4 pillars, we're really looking at ecosystem development, device access, digital skills, and public benefit adoption. Obviously, we're looking for, ACP or other low-cost options for our families, making sure they're also being utilizing other public benefits that they're eligible for. But for us, really, the overarching thing is how do we create this ecosystem, right? We know that there's that once in a generation investment happening at the federal and state level. So how do we make sure our nonprofits are ready for that? I think, there's been cases where a lot of our rural communities have been left behind. So making sure we're engaging our community partners and making sure they have the resources and the comfort level to really make sure that they're advocating for their communities and able to apply for some of the funding. So it's really been the work we're doing, is really making sure that people are connecting with each other, utilizing each other, and making sure that they have the resources for that capacity for once funding is available. And then, of course, the kind of three legs of the stool, the device access, the digital skills, and the affordability component. So that's really been the work that we've been doing. So we decided to really take our first big launch into digital equity by releasing an RFP last summer. And through that RFP, we awarded $21 million to 20 organizations over 3 years. But next slide, I'm sorry. Because we have such a large service area, we wanted to make sure to target and kind of pilot some of this work in 4 regions. So we're working in the lower Rio Grande Valley, the mid-border region, San Antonio, and Austin. And we made some of those decisions based on data, of course, but also making sure we had relationships and where some ecosystems were developing or needed some support to develop. So we made sure that those regions were really somewhere where we also had MHM staff to support some of that growth and some of those connections, but also making sure that we were really able to be reactive and supportive of those regions. So those are the 4 regions we are initially targeting, but doesn't mean we're not doing work across the other counties that we service as well. We are supporting wherever we can with some of our grant dollars or some of our policy and advocacy work, and just making sure that we're sharing the resources amongst our partners across those 74 counties. And of course, we definitely prioritize the 8 covered populations, but knowing that every community is different, we allowed communities to apply for anything that was important for them and their community as well. So next slide. So I think really what we wanted to do, we're a healthcare funder, but one of the things we really wanted to make sure to do is be a funder beyond the check. How do we create that space and opportunities for partners to come together to share some of those pain points and not have to recreate the wheel? Because for us, when we put that RFP out, we weren't necessarily looking for digital equity groups, right? I think, there's definitely some that are popular, some here that have some track records here in Texas, but a lot of our communities didn't even know what that meant. So for us, for that grantee, our grant opportunity, we're really just making sure that our organizations had trusted relationships with their communities, they had done program development, and were willing to learn about digital equity. So we've really created the space where partners can come together, have some of those conversations. We've included some national partners, some local government, to really have different conversations to make sure we're really creating that opportunity to learn from each other, but most importantly, start working together more organically. So once these grant opportunities become available, they can work together and apply together. We know there's limited resources that are out there. So how can we make sure to bring them together where they have a place to kind of talk through some of these issues and some of these partnerships? So that's really the work that we really are looking to create, is that kind of alignment of efforts and partnerships. For us, we know that, as a healthcare organization too, we wanted organizations to be able to thinking about health, because when we think about health, that's looking at, economic mobility, access to resources, housing, any food security issues. So also making sure we're thinking about the bigger picture, because, for us, digital equity is a super social determinant of health. So making sure that our partners kind of understood some of the health impacts that occur because of digital equity. And one of the other things we're trying to do, we know we're in Texas and we know there's limited funding as well, but also trying to bring other funders on board, right? We're willing to talk to anybody to kind of, seeing the need to raise up the needs for digital equity. And really, when we think about it, if you're funding housing, if you're funding food security, you're also funding digital equity, because most of those platforms and things that happen are online. People need to have those skills and that access to devices. So how do we start talking and framing, digital equity in a different way, where more funders are willing to come to the table and have some of these conversations and really leverage some of the work that communities are already doing? So thinking about it beyond that. And when we think about ACP, we know that is winding down, and that's definitely one of the biggest concerns of our grantee cohort. what does that look like beyond, ACP? So thinking about how can we be innovative together? What's working? What are the low cost plans in your area? Can we, invite other ISPs to kind of think about some of that, especially some of our smaller local, regional, mid-sized kind of ISPs. So how do we bring them to the table as well? I know this is kind of like an ambitious plan and we've just kind of set off in our first year, but we really think we have the groundwork and we have the partners who are willing to support this work and really move the needle here in South Texas, where we already see some of the least connected cities becoming some of the most connected cities. So we're really excited about the work that's happening around our grantee cohort. Next slide. And I think, here's a list of our grantees, and, these names might not see, people will see these differently from across the country, but I think it's really interesting because we have, healthcare, we have municipalities, we have organizations who are working in Texas colonias, we have school systems, and we have coalitions. So I think it goes to show the depth and range of our cohort and the willingness of partners to come together and have these conversations. We all don't come from the same digital equity background or expertise, but we're all coming to the table with the same end goal and working together. So I think that's bringing us together in a different way that maybe we haven't had that conversation. I think one of the things I've heard from a couple of our partners is that, this is the first time the city may be willing to talk to them about digital equity, or they feel like there's more opportunities to collaborate because of the funding opportunity. So it doesn't feel like, that sometimes we feel like the hoarding of money because it's money and sometimes, resources aren't always there. But I think people are willing to have that different conversation now, and we're happy to bring that opportunity to our partners. So, and sometimes, as a funder, we're bringing our partners together. But if you as an organization can be that convener, definitely take that opportunity, because we need to make sure that our coalitions and our communities have voice. So whatever that looks like, whether that's a funder or your own organization taking that lead, I definitely recommend that you do that. Next slide. And I also want to mention, we're also walking the walk. We are a healthcare organization that has clinics, that works with individuals, patients, and clients. And we are also trying to work on our own digital equity practices, our own digital inclusion practices. So we brought on additional staff. I was a staff of 1 for 18 months. Now we're a staff of 3. But how, as an organization, as a funder, are we, leading by example, not just expecting you as our partners, our grantee to be doing this work, but we're also doing the work along with you. We are trying to change different practices in our clinics, trying to make sure we're thinking about different technologies around healthcare, whether that's remote monitoring systems and devices, thinking about different patient portals and how that translates for those who don't have digital skills or access. So really thinking about internally as an organization ourselves, how we reflect the work that we're asking our partners to do. So making sure that we too are having that commitment to digital equity as an organization, not just as a funder or as a healthcare organization. So it's definitely been a journey. And I think, with ACP winding down, there is still opportunity to think about more innovation and also more opportunity and partnership opportunities. But really for us, it's just how do we make sure that our partners in our communities get the resources they need? And it may take a little bit longer now that we don't have ACP, but I think having sometimes those difficult conversations can really change the trajectory of our communities. That's my last slide.
Wonderful. Oh, Monica, stick around.
Ducking
in and out there.
down.
That was terrific, and I'll note that you work closely with Deanne, or Deanne works closely with you on my team, and we feel blessed to be in that work with you. I think a lot of people who are here are thinking, man, I wish like a major health provider, organization like this was involved in my area. And so my question to you is, if you have a sense of what outcomes you'll be seeing across this area, which is vastly rural and deeply urban, what kind of outcomes would you expect that maybe other people could entice their healthcare systems to be interested in?
I think one of the things that we're looking at is telehealth opportunities, right? Because we're talking about healthcare in rural areas, they don't have a lot of specialty clinics or specialty resources. So thinking about how we create telehealth rooms or other opportunities in rural areas. But for us, we definitely we standardize some KPIs, so everyone's tracking the same thing. Everyone knows who's responsible for tracking the same thing. But for those, the outcomes we see is how do we improve people's health and well-being? And health and well-being can be telehealth. It can be access to food resources. It can be to stable housing. So I think it's about how we change that message where it's not just technology, right? It's a person's whole being and their improved outcomes in life. So I think it's more about how we have that conversation with a funder or a healthcare organization. And we're also like, I'm volunteering myself to have some of those conversations because we know there's other healthcare organizations who could be doing this and who want to do this. And, it was a little bit scary for our board to kind of take this path because, technology, sometimes scares people, but this is more than technology. And I think it's been that education to our board about this is a person's life and this is a person's, mobility and access. So how do we really change that conversation and creating more opportunities for our communities? We're really trying to solve for poverty. We're not trying to solve for anything different. It's poverty and disinvestment that's happened for a long time in our communities.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Monica. I love that your first pillar that you talked about was about ecosystem development. We are all about coalition forming, partnering, all of that. It's just, you just highlighted all the benefits of like creating a space. I love that you're creating a space for people to come and share knowledge and not really so much reinvent the wheel, but resource sharing and figuring out how to best allocate those resources of that strategic collaboration. So thank you so much for your presentation and the work that you're doing. And it's funny that you said that in 18 months, you went from a staff of 1 and you grew your team because our next speaker also had a glow up within 18 months. And so before we get to that, we do have our final trivia question. So if we'll put that on the screen, perfect. All right. So you know the drill. Put the question or put your answer in the chat if you think you know what it is. The question is, are ACP households required to stay with their internet company or continue to receive the same internet service after the end of ACP? Oh, we got somebody typing C.
I just had to throw a little curveball there. Well, give people a chance to think about that. So A would be no, households are not required to stay with their internet service company. And B would be yes, they do have to stick around with them after the end of ACP. I do not see a lot of confusion on this one. It looks like, Pamela?
The answer is A. Most of you are correct. ACP households are not required to stay with their internet company or continue to receive the same internet service after ACP. And if the internet service provider is requiring that or telling their subscriber that they must stay with them, then go ahead and file that complaint. Let them know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say sometimes ISPs are confused. Sometimes they have a person, a customer service person who's confused about it. I would generally try to clarify with the company if you are feeling some kind of abuse or certainly any kind of fraud. That is when you certainly want to file the complaint. I always want to, I don't think we want to overuse the system. So I would make sure that you have a good case before moving forward with it.
For sure.
We do have a question about that I would like to address quick, which is which states are offering a substitute to the ACP program after it ends. I don't think we have a good sense of that yet. I mean, I do believe that Illinois is looking at one. I don't believe it's been implemented yet. There was talk that California might do one. However, that was before they had I believe, many tens of $billion deficit announced for their coming budget. So it seems unlikely. The cost for the state of California to continue this program is $1 billion a year. And so one of the things that we have to wrestle with, and one of the reasons that we are coming next to our next guest, is because even if the ACP is continued in this short term, I don't know how much we can count on it in the long term in terms of such a generous subsidy. And I have a strong belief that we will need to have some sort of more structural change to fix this. So anyway, that's just to say that. I think I'm gonna move on to the city of FAR here, and that's a discussion for probably the wrap up. regarding that question. So there will be some states. I don't know that a single state has yet committed to it, is the answer. Our next speaker is from the city of FAR. And now this is a really an exciting get to have Jose Pena, because FAR, Texas, which is located down on the border of Mexico, was considered one of the worst connected cities in the country. It has a lot of challenges with poverty. Jose Pena is the Innovation and Technology Director for the city of FAR. He's going to talk about how the city decided to invest and I think use the tools from the federal government of the ACP to develop a solution that would persist even after it ended. And I think this is the sort of thing we'd like to see. I will credit Jose's that he works for a very visionary mayor who has a whole lot of charisma, and may we all have the kind of leadership that you've been experiencing down there, Jose. But I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you, and again, you're very right. It's all the leadership, just like all these other entities that have participated here today, and everybody here listening, because again, this is a very important topic, obviously with very big national attention. But again, we follow our mayor's lead. He is a doctor by trade or by profession, and he's a very sharp individual and knows how to get our organization moving, and we've been very successful with him leading this city. And with that, I'll start with our next slide, which is, let's talk a little bit about where FAR was a few years ago, very short years ago, right? So in 2019, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance published their report, and the city of FAR actually ranked #1 as the worst connected city in the nation, which was very, it was something we actually knew ourselves. But as a region, #3 and #5 on that list were all here from the lower Rio Grande Valley here in South Texas. And, it was very eye-opening. And as everybody here in our region, we really only have had one incumbent provider, and we're really at their mercy. Kind of like I've seen a few people mention that they're in that same dilemma, right? Where we all wish there was some competition to hopefully drive pricing down. But again, when our mayor got elected in 2015, internet and education were one of his main priorities. So I came on board in 2017, and we started a partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, our local school district, and trying to identify how to increase the poverty levels in the colonias in our region. And the digital divide was a main key factor there. So we did have our feasibility study funded by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas back in 2018, and we actually knew about this big initiative. Back in 2018, we also started with our local school district, identified 50 homes, and we actually built towers and provided internet to 50 homes to understand how the benefit of the internet would work with them. And for those of you who've ever watched our YouTube video of our story, it's kind of very, touching to hear these stories back from 2018 that we published that video. And it really tells a story of where we were and kind of why our mayor decided to move us to where we are today, which is, again, we could go to the next slide. So our city and our mayor, who also works with our EDC, Economic Development Corporation, the city used, we first surveyed our community and identified the price points of what pricing our residents would actually prefer. $25 was kind of one of that plan that about 60% of all the submitters or respondents preferred. So we use that as a baseline, and working with our EDC, they were able to purchase revenue bonds and fund this project, along with a portion of the project funds came from the federal ARPA funding that every or most municipalities and public entities received during the COVID years. So the broadband was one of those allowable expenses, and with the revenue bonds and with the ARPA funds, that's how our city self-funded or built this network, at no cost to taxpayers. Again, didn't have to raise taxes for anybody. And right now we kind of are at that point where things are going very fast. We've been growing very quickly. I'll show a little bit a slide here shortly. Again, it's fiber throughout every city property. There's a handhole in front of every two residences. In between every two residents, we provide fiber to every home. It is 100% underground because in our area we are prone to hurricanes and didn't want to have to rely on power poles and aerial issues, but all our network is 100% underground. And if here we can go to the next slide. Here's kind of just a sample overview of what a subdivision construction looks like. This actually is in our South Far area. This is our neighborhood where 60% of all the subscribers are already onboarded using our services. And you can kind of see, how many subscribers out of how many homes in that area. But literally, we provide the fiber from the front of the curb into their home. We provide the hardware for the Wi-Fi inside their home. We provide the mobile application with the software for Protect IQ and Experience IQ, which is the cybersecurity controls and the parental controls included at no cost to all our subscribers, which we always educate them on, how to properly configuring them and, making sure that they're using every tool that we have to offer at no cost. Next slide, please. Here you can see we do have 3 residential plans. When we started, we only had 2 plans. We only had the $25 plan and the $50 plan. But since obviously our fiber networks will be able to continue to grow, because at the end of the day, it's just electronics, and the equipment that we bought did support 2 gigabytes of service. And as some subscribers had previously asked about, like, hey, could we get faster internet? And sure enough, we could. So we created this $80 2 gigabyte plan. All these plans are symmetrical. I can say that 40% of our subscribers opt for that $25 plan, and 60% opt for the $50 or $80 plan. So again, a lot of the majority are, they really want fast internet, and it's very neat being to be able to see this and get our customers connected and see those speed tests again, because they're pretty cool, and knowing that they have a really good product that we provide to them. Next slide, please. So yeah, they touched on here a little bit of what are we going to do now without ACP. So our mayor, like I mentioned, very innovative, worked with our school district, or our largest school district. We do have 5 within our city limits, but this is the largest school district here in the area. So they have a population of over 30,000 students, but it does encompass 2 other cities. But half of that population actually live within city limits. In working with them, knowing that, again, schools obviously were providing hotspots, and knowing how inefficient they were. Obviously, if there was a multi-student household, that was problematic. Where not many or not more than 1 or 2 students could actually use the service at once. So again, the school district partnered with the city. They do fund the 1 gigabyte service for every household. And today we're actually over 2,300 homes already connected to date. And the other neat part is that's about just 40% of our subscriber base. So really everybody is kind of hopping on to our network more due to the low cost of the service. And that's one of those things where we can actually see, a lot of it is people do value, a good product, but also something that's more affordable that, will help them financially. Next slide, please. This is kind of just South Far alone. This is literally the region that was the worst connected part of town. This is right by our international bridge in South Far, which again, the city of Far, like I mentioned, it is a border community, and we do have an industrial international bridge. It is the #1 port of entry for produce for the nation. And we do have a big industrial zone. But again, this population, back in, when COVID happened, I'd plug in random addresses in our incumbent providers' website for services, and, they could get 10 megs or 20 megs. Basically, the only service, there really was no infrastructure, no fiber available for anybody, or no even coax option even to consider. So again, today our project has crossed 18,480 homes. We actually do have close to, I think we're over 5,300 already subscribers since last week to now this week that I've updated my slides, and we're at a 28% take rate. This area alone, which was South Far, like I mentioned, it is about 7,300 homes, and 36% of them actually are on a network so far. And you can kind of see that visual distribution, and the one I referenced being 60% is that one kind of in the northern central area. So next slide. This is kind of our growth trend. The yellow line is the overall subscribers. The blue line is our monthly increase in subscribers. It looks like my totals were cut off, but literally for the past year, we've been growing over 10% every month. Some months we've grown to 15 to 18%. This last month of February, we grew the most ever. In the month of February, we actually onboarded 688 subscribers. And so far this month, we have already hit over 450 in this month of March already. So we do have our teams that are very active, and our marketing agency as well, very active, booking appointments and helping us onboard subscribers. Next slide, please. This does show the staff that we have in our team. We are funded for up to 56 employees, thanks to the generosity of MHM, the Methodist Healthcare Ministries Foundation. They did fund this current year 6 additional individuals to help build our digital equity and inclusion programs. But being a municipal IT government, and then being able to now take on the responsibility of becoming an internet service provider business, again, we did have to grow, right? We have to add staff to our customer service team so that we can offer local bilingual customer service to any of our subscribers. We also had to hire our fiber technicians, which is the staff that go and troubleshoot any issue with any of our subscribers and help them with their internet connection and at their homes. And obviously then the back-end systems engineers on our team to continue moving forward this project. So that's kind of how our staff actually grew from our municipal operation, but now the internet service operation. Next. So here today, it's kind of like what we're, being supported by this program, helping grow and paying it forward. Our area since we started. And like I mentioned, 3 of those top 5 cities were in our region. They've all, our local counties and other local municipalities have started similar projects, looking at ours, how successful we've been, and looking at funding their own uh, uh, projects or similar to ours. Again, so it is really neat that now our region is understanding this benefit as a whole and knowing that we have to do something about it. The other thing is we always open our doors. We're a public agency, and we've had visitors come and visit us and learn about how it is we do what we do. We actually have already had a formal memorandum of understanding with the Kiowa tribes out of Oklahoma, who we've visited and worked with, and that was kind of we had that same reception from the city of Mount Bellevue here in Texas, who kind of opened their doors to us so we could learn what we were getting ourselves into back then when we started, and touching back on those school partnerships as well. Like I mentioned, we also work with our universities and colleges. We offer them their capstone courses to come do them with us so they can learn from our cybersecurity staff, so they can learn from our networking staff as well. And as well as with this MHM partnership, they actually have also funded our internship program, which those are for our high school students. And again, that's something that these students are going to be able to utilize when they submit their college applications or on their resumes going forward. So we're all about improving the quality of education in our region. And again, obviously using those grants. Here it is, kind of last year, we were also, that's when we started working with the Methodist Healthcare Ministries. They did give us $1 million grant to help us alleviate this startup cost of trying to deliver these last mile home connections. That work does get outsourced to 2 different companies to help us increase the volume of subscriber onboarding. Like I said, we started with, when we first hit 100 connections in 1 month, then we went to 300, then hit 400. And, like I mentioned, last month, we were at 688 and just about to hit 500 this month, very shortly. The program that Monica here a few minutes ago shared with us, the city of FAR was another grantee for these next 3 years at $3.2 million. Again, it did fund our internship programs and our staff to build out our digital equity and inclusion training programs. They did fund devices that we'll be able to distribute to our families that participate in the education programs. And we're not just doing digital training. We are starting with that digital training, but for us, we're gonna create. We're gonna have financial literacy training, healthcare, telehealth with our new public health department, providing presentations as well. Our educational partnerships, presenting on what they do with remote learning opportunities and with our workforce solutions on applying for jobs and working from home. And you can literally work for any business in the country that offers that opportunity. And the other neat thing was that they also funded our BARC subscriptions through the Calix platform, which is the software that prevents and notifies parents of any cyberbullying or threats as it monitors social media and messaging platforms of minors within the household. So that was also one of those great initiatives that we'll be able to start here very shortly.
Wonderful. We're gonna have to not go into your awards and accolades, I'm afraid, although it is quite a lengthy list. It is very inspiring. We saw people in the chat as well that are very inspired by this work. I have to say, as someone who's been working in this space for 16, 17 years, I feel like I often hear this thing of like, oh, well, sure, they could do it. Sure, Palo Alto could do it, or sure, Chattanooga could do it. I do feel like FAR is demonstrating that, making something a goal and then like having good people that actually set to work doing it shows to me that many communities have within reach a life-changing investment for their communities if they want to prioritize it.
Definitely.
Thank you, Jose. We really appreciate it, and I think it's very inspiring. We're going to share the slides in the presentation, and sorry, in the follow up. It's been something that's been asked a couple of times. Is where can we get access to these slides? That's there. There's also Team FAR has released videos. There is all kinds of information about what they have done that you can find with a simple search on the internets. So, with that, Pamela, I think you're going to introduce our keynote.
Yes, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Jose. So throughout today's show, we gained insights on the value of partnerships and digital equity ecosystems, affordability being a value proposition, and structural approaches to connectivity. To complete the picture, our next speaker is going to share how we can implement equitable, inclusive, and culturally relevant digital equity strategies with racial equity at its core. We're very lucky to have Rebecca Kuma joining us today to share racial equity-centered best practices and what the County of LA is doing in regards to helping residents transition off of ACP. Everyone, please join me in welcoming our awesome keynote speaker, a leader and role model, Rebecca Kuma, the Director of Digital Equity for the County of Los Angeles.
Hello, hello. So happy to be here, and thank you so much for the warm introduction, Pamela. So I'll go ahead and dive in. And I do want to mention that the context of this keynote is to ultimately center racial equity as a form of key strategies as we're beginning to transition with our ACP efforts. So the first thing that I want to uplift is what the digital divide looks like in the County of Los Angeles. So you're able to see here that 9.7% of households in Los Angeles County do not have an internet subscription, and 4.6% of households do not have a computer in Los Angeles County. And as you guys already know, when you're looking at this and disaggregating it by other equity indicators such as race/ethnicity, education attainment, and even age, you'll be able to see that those inequities disproportionately impact more communities, especially our Black and Brown communities. So I have one guiding question for all of you guys today, and this is very important as you guys are beginning to transition all of your community members off of ACP into other programs, we hope, is how can we be equitable, inclusive, and culturally relevant when we're engaging with communities most impacted by the digital divide and with trusted partners as part of our development and implementation of digital equity strategies. So I do want to mention that this should be a question that you guys should be asking yourselves every single day. And although that we're focusing here on ACP transition, I do want to mention that all of the racial equity strategies that I'm sharing today do uplift other key digital equity aspects as well. So in terms of frameworks and approaches, obviously today we'll be talking a lot about racial equity, but I do want to mention that it's very important for us to make sure that we're collaborating and utilizing the spectrum of collaboration to ensure that we're ultimately integrating all of our efforts together. In addition to that, also centering collective impact. So I love this approach because not only does it center large-scale population change, but it also uplifts systems level change and making sure that we're working together not only with our communities, but also our stakeholder organizations on long-term efforts. In addition to that, we must also center an equity lens. So that means we're being very intentional, thoughtful, and inclusive in the work that we're doing. And then we'll also be centering a racial equity tool, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we can do that. And most importantly, as you guys are beginning to transition community members off of ACP, it's also very imperative that we're strengthening and transforming our relationships that we have with communities and making sure that their lived experiences are included and that they have voice, power, and ownership in decision making. So when we're talking about racial equity, it's important for us to understand that we must lead explicitly, but not exclusively with race. So the beauty of utilizing a racial equity tool as part of our efforts is that race is obviously a key component of the work that we're doing, but it also addresses other areas of marginalization. So this could include ability, age, education level, gender. And so by us addressing racial inequities, it will allow us to address those other areas as well. And racial equity uplifts fairness and justice, and it also exists across other systems as well. So as we've heard from our other speakers, when we're looking at how we can work closely with community and our community-based organizations as part of this work, it's important for us to have that systems level understanding in order for us to truly address those root causes that are creating the digital inequities and also the digital divide as well. So you'll be able to understand that although digital equity is its own issue area, and this is something that our other speaker mentioned, it's important for us to understand the intersectionality as we're beginning to address other issue areas. So when we're looking at ACP transition, how are we connecting with community members that are also receiving assistance as part of housing? How are we connecting with community members that are also receiving assistance as part of public health or healthcare? It's important for us to include these as part of our efforts and for us to have a systems approach as we're addressing these particular issues. And in addition to that, when we're looking at systems change in our efforts, we must be able to address all of these 6 conditions that are listed here. So obviously we've heard from Amy today, how are we continuing to influence our policies? We've heard from a variety of different organizations that have key government practices on how they're changing their systems to ensure that residents can still get equitable access to broadband internet. How are we allocating funding to communities that historically don't have internet? How are we addressing those power dynamics as we're providing those additional resources? So here are all the different aspects that should be taken into consideration with ACP transition, but obviously other digital equity strategies. So first, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about how we can work closely with our trusted community-based organizations or our trusted partners. First and foremost, we must make sure that we're providing them with fair compensation for this work. So as we're engaging with communities, how are we providing these partners with resources to be able to implement all of the touch points that they're having with those most impacted? In addition to that, leverage them for culturally appropriate and community-centered strategies. They're the experts when it comes to that, so it's important for us to uplift that in the work that we're trying to do. In addition to that, make sure that we're also uplifting their assets, best practices, and strengths, and making sure that we're addressing some of those key power dynamics, especially when we're engaging with community-based organizations that perhaps don't have the best relationship with government entities. And in addition to that, making sure that we're working with them for language access, and that includes written translation services and also oral interpretation services. When we're doing community engagement, especially with ACP transition, making sure you have an extensive budget. In addition to that, making sure that you're also meeting communities where they're already gathering. So if you know that there's going to be a community event, use that as an opportunity to engage with community. And if you're not able to meet them where they're gathering, host communities in community-friendly, trusted spaces where they'll feel comfortable also going to. We also must acknowledge the trauma that many of our communities have experienced, whether it's in this country or even their country of origin, and making sure that we understand that we must be trauma-informed and addressing some of those key aspects as well. And also we must create spaces for healing and art sharing, music and storytelling that also adds to the experience when we're also engaging with community members. And one of my biggest takeaways that I want to uplift as part of this work, especially as we're beginning to plan for federal and state digital equity funding, is making sure that we're providing food, beverages, and giveaways that address the community's needs. And here's the spectrum of community engagement. I just want to uplift the fact that as we're striving for equitable community engagement, we must always operate on the empowerment side, because that is when community has true ownership, power, and voice in our decision-making processes. So I'll go ahead and just quickly highlight some of our key efforts of how we're applying racial equity in practice here in the County of Los Angeles. So first and foremost, we are implementing our own broadband internet services for low-income individuals, where we are actually contracting with managed service providers and deploying and operating community broadband networks through public-private partnerships. And through our particular efforts, our staff here have been applying a racial equity lens to ultimately determine which communities should be prioritized as part of this effort, and also centering disaggregated data and utilizing the American Community Survey data to help shape what communities should be prioritized. In addition to that, we have an amazing Delete the Divide team, and these are individuals that are on the ground working directly with community. And our staff here in the County of Los Angeles have been utilizing racial equity by hiring digital navigators that come directly from the community and providing them with equitable access to job training, and also for them to be able to see what it's like to work in county government. And these individuals are also helping connecting with residents regarding ACP and really making sure that the residents understand what that transition process looks like and making sure that they're addressing any gaps. And last but not least, this is an effort that I'm working closely on, and we're in the process of officially launching our Intergovernmental Broadband Coordinating Committee. And this committee will serve as a collective body where we'll work closely with our stakeholder organizations and community members to ultimately secure, implement, and deploy federal and state grant funding. And we will be utilizing a racial equity lens by prioritizing communities and neighborhoods most in need as part of these resources and services. In addition to that, making sure that we're including community ambassadors that are impacted by the digital divide as part of our decision-making process. So I'm happy to share a little bit more about what we were working on here in LA County, and definitely make sure that you apply racial equity best practices as part of your ACP transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's remarkably clear. I'm envious of your presentation style. I have a question, which I understand if we didn't prep you for, but the leading with racial equity as a government agency. I'm curious, since you've had a lot of experience with different government agencies, are there challenges with civil rights requirements and things like that in terms of leading so boldly with racial equity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say as of now, no. There's a lot of great curriculum, especially through the Government Alliance for Race and Equity, that provides tangible best practices and resources such as the Racial Equity Toolkit, which I literally look at every single day, which provides key tangible resources that we can apply to our daily work. And if anything was to come up, then obviously county council or the city attorney's office would be involved, but I haven't encountered any issues with the work that we're trying to do, both at my time in Long Beach and then obviously with my time here with the county.
Pamela, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rebecca. I always love hearing you speak and present. I love that you always take the lens and you just widen out the frame and always make sure that we center racial equity, even, when the strategy of finding partners to collaborate with and, engaging with other community organizations. Because earlier we were talking about the benefits of partnering, and you just said, nope, let's think a little bit bigger too and talk about how the strategy of partnering and choosing organizations you want to connect with. I did have a question of how can we ensure that our partnerships are truly inclusive and representatives of the community that we serve? Is there there's not always going to be one answer, but what is one step that organizations can take towards including racial equity into their, relationship building and partnerships?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So during my time at Long Beach, it was very evident to me as a government employee which organizations had trust and relationships in the communities. You would always see them at various events, and they were always the ones that were willing to get involved. So definitely pay attention, and also the community will let you know who they trust and who they do not trust as well. So take all of those aspects, and I would say just start off by having those conversations and then utilize that discernment on whether or not you should work with them, and just making sure that those organizations truly value uplifting community and making sure that they're able to support them as part of those efforts. And one other thing as well, many of these organizations are involved in other key aspects as well. So a lot of the organizations that I worked with in Long Beach were also involved in the 2020 census effort. So you'll be able to see that history and track record of all of the great work that they've done in other areas as they're addressing other inequities as well.
Awesome. So basically, listen, let the community guide you. Yeah. Let them show you who they trust and make sure that person is part of the discussion and strategy making.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Always great to have you. And I believe I'll pass it over to Chris to give some final statements.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just in my head about what a mush mouth I am compared to some of the people. Yesterday, we had parent-teacher conferences, and my son has have wonderful at speaking, but he has a speech coach that like helps him with refining it. And I was afraid to talk during our discussion with her because I feel like such a mush mouth. And Rebecca is so great on the microphone, and I feel that I'm not. I did want to wrap up by going back to the beginning, which is that we have highlighted not only some of the ways that local governments and local communities are working together to try to solve these issues that the ACP was helpful on, but also even a little bit about how they're actually doing it, like in the case of Rebecca with that racial centering of race as you're figuring out where to invest and how to work with those communities. In the run-up, we asked people for questions, and we got several people who are asking about, what can be done at the local level, what can we do if the ACP goes away? And in the middle, I kind of muddled through a half answer to that. And, I would say that we are probably going to have a program like the ACP again in the future. It will likely not be available to as many people, and it may not be as generous, but it will likely be more permanent if I was to be making bets in Vegas. What that means is that we do need more local involvement. We need digital equity coalitions to make this a priority, to make sure that we have better options. I think the cable companies pass nearly 85% of the population, and for many people, they are a good solution. But I think that in low-income neighborhoods, the kinds we've been talking about that often feature more racial minorities, that feature people who have more challenges to seizing opportunities that are available today, we need networks that are dedicated to actually resolving their needs rather than it being a sort of second best offer from a cable company that's focused on maximizing its revenues. And so I'm not saying that the cable companies aren't helpful. What I'm saying is that we cannot count on cable companies or the telephone companies to resolve this issue in all of the areas. And we need to have local strategies that aren't just hopeful that the federal government will write a check forever. I think everyone knows that, but it's helpful to just state it and to say that I'm really excited to be highlighting some of the different solutions that we've seen here today. And I hope that helps with the questions people asked. But we'll be doing more of this in the future to make sure we're centering a lot of these approaches.
Yes, and we're so grateful to have, folks like Jason, folks like Monica and Jose to come and share those strategies, and then Rebecca to round it out of just remembering, like when you are creating those partnerships, to make sure that you are having the right people at the table.
Absolutely. So I think we're ready to wrap up.
Yes. Thank you all for joining us. This was a very fun first 2024 Building for Digital Equity event. Hope you join us for the rest of the year. We would love for you to stay connected to NDIA and be a part of that listserv so you can join the conversation and get those updates about any ACP updates on the wind down and transition.
Yeah, and we have a survey in the chat. We really appreciate the answers. If you don't know me, I have a huge ego, and if you think you can take me down a notch by telling us what we can do better, I challenge you. So we love to hear praise, but we also really like to hear what we can do better. So please share your honest feedback. We want to thank our sponsor, Utopia Fiber. They've been a wonderful partner. And we really thank them for their support to make these events happen. We will be looking at another one in the late April, early May timeframe, I would imagine. I got that wrong. Late May, early June timeframe. Sorry for everyone whose heart just skipped a beat. We have a little bit more time than that to prepare. So we will be doing another one. We want to have a lot of feedback on it. We have a lovely series of podcasts and things like that. The Connect This show is available, connectthisshow.com, the Community Broadband Bits podcast. But also, we did some great interviews at Net Inclusion, and we're working with a producer right now to put those together. There's a few interviews from last year I didn't run yet because I just ran out of time and I was trying to edit them all myself. So we have someone, we're working on getting those out. The second season of Building for Digital Equity, the podcast, the audio-only podcast, will be coming back out in a few weeks. So we're excited about that. But Pamela, thank you so much. I really appreciate you as a co-host, and not only that, but like planning so much of this. Thank you to Jordan for stepping up on the ILSR staff, and so many other people contributing behind the scenes, people who took time to present, and all of you in the audience who came to critically engage and keep doing better at the work that you're called to do. Thank you all. I don't think there's anything else, is there?
That's it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.